Hello, everyone. This is the first of our EMF Behind the Batons, and most appropriately, we're dealing this EMF Behind the Baton with our great concertmaster, the director of the chamber music program, the director of the violin program, longtime associate of EMF, Jeff Multer. Jeff's also the concertmaster of the Florida Orchestra. He taught at the Juilliard Pre-College and at the Miami University, Ohio. He also was a member of the Oxford Quartet. He's in demand as a soloist, having played just about every season with me at EMF and with the Florida Orchestra and all over the country. And of course, a great chamber music player and the director of the Palladium Chamber. I mean, the list goes on. And it's because of his incredible artistic talent and violinistic talent. So welcome, Jeff. Thanks for being the first of our EMF Behind the Batons.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm glad we're doing this. I think it's great for our audience and our supporters at EMF to hear from us during this time.
What's so interesting, of course, is that they hear from you all the time through your violin, through the incredible chamber music performances, concertos, and leading the orchestra. And they also hear from you often on Monday nights when you make a little speech saying what's coming on this particular program. But I'm not sure if everyone understands your incredibly long, dedicated commitment to EMF from the time you were a student. Could you give us a little of that background, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was thinking about this today, and I think of the last 40 summers that have gone by, 32 of them I've spent in Greensboro at Eastern Music Festival. Wow. A couple of them as a student, 1979, 1980. And then, I was an undergraduate in college and I think around my junior year, I auditioned for Shelley Morgenstern. I think it was 1986 was my first summer on faculty. And then I was there for a long stretch. And then I got my first concertmaster job out in Colorado at the Breckenridge Music Institute. And I was there 3 summers. And then I came back to audition for the concertmaster position in 97. So all of those summers have been at EMF. Yeah.
Wow, that's extraordinary. But now tell me, what was it like first let's do it from the student day. What was your experience as a student at EMF in those days?
Well, I think it was my experiences as a student that really shaped my, commitment to EMF, because I had such a great time. I was coming from an environment, upstate New York, high school, no orchestra, band only. There was a wonderful youth symphony in Rochester that I was a part of. But as far as being around my peers, people who are really interested in classical music, going to try to go to conservatory, going to try to make a career out of it, this was my first time that I had ever been around a group of kids like that. And so that just completely opened my eyes, as well as just all the wonderful repertoire we got to play. And it just changed my life. It sort of made me realize, yes, I would like to give this a try. This is what I want to try to do.
Now, what about, are there fellow students from those days that you still know? Does that exist?
Chauncey Patterson and I were there together that first summer. Jennifer Combs was there that summer. Tons and tons of people were there those summers, those 2 summers. And I still keep in touch with them. And every once in a while, it even turns out that, there were so many of us, there's 200 plus kids there every summer. So I didn't know them all, even if they were in the orchestra. And occasionally I'll run into somebody at a concert somewhere far, not connected to anything. And we'll remember that we were both there in 1979 or 1980 or something like that. So lots of connections were made. Yeah.
We're going to do one of these with Chauncey too. So I get to hear his story, get to hear his take on you when you were.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So Jeff, so many people always ask the question of me, and I'll ask it of you. What does the concertmaster do? I mean, you're not only the concertmaster with our orchestra and with the Florida Orchestra, you're the associate concertmaster of the All-Stars. I mean, your position of leadership for the orchestra is extraordinary, and most people don't really understand it, just the way they don't understand what I do when I wave my hands. They don't understand why you're so important besides giving the A from the oboe.
Right. Well, I mean, that is the obvious thing that we do. And it's interesting because, of course, back in the old days when orchestras were just small, maybe 15 people, then basically the person who sat in my chair led the orchestra. And so when orchestras got bigger and more complicated, then we needed you to come and make sure that we don't all get lost, because there's 70 feet between players and stuff like that. So the leadership part of it, for the concertmaster, and also all the principal strings sitting up front, is really crucial, in terms of we have to assist you, the conductor, to make sure that your ideas are being executed properly. You'll be very busy dealing with something sensitive in the back of the orchestra or the side of the orchestra, and you have to, a conductor has to assume that the concertmaster and all the principal strings are working in consort with him to keep the strings always, doing what they need to be doing. Because let's face it, the strings sit in the front. Strings do a lion's share of the work in pretty much all orchestral repertoire. So you can't, you or any conductor can't babysit us for every single ensemble issue, every single pizzicato, when you're trying to deal, with a beautiful Brahms symphony and you've got a beautiful wind chorale that you've got to phrase and shape. You're going to pay attention to them and assume that we're going to do our job and play together with them without you having to help us. So that's our job. That's what we do. We basically, take care of that kind of thing.
People often ask about the Boeings, the downs and the ups of the strings, usually in unison, but not always, and the role that you play in that and how that shapes the musical phrase.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Boeing, the alignment of the Boeings is something that all the string principals participate in, but it sort of starts with me or with you, really, with a conductor. A good conductor knows what Boeings they like, especially with repertoire they've done many times. And so, you'll consult with me, I'll talk to you, maybe we change one or two little things, and then basically the rest of the string players follow suit.
Well, what about a situation where a conductor has no idea?
Well, then we have to right. Like some of the wonderful conductors I've worked with are pianists or wind players or something, and they know that they don't understand the fundamentals of string bowing, so they leave it up to the string principals, the concertmaster. So then, basically, I do my version of what I think works best. Where it's going to be good down, where it's going to be good up, where we need to change the bow, where we need to play more quietly, and I try to organize that, make an addition of my own, and then that goes around the horseshoe to the other string principals who hopefully approve it. But if they don't, we negotiate a little bit, and then we come up with something that hopefully works for the conductor. Yeah.
I've noticed that the concertmaster changes the sound of an orchestra. If you have a concertmaster with your kind of rich, beautiful sound, the strings have that sound. If you have someone without that quality, the strings have that kind of, how can one person, the concertmaster, influence a whole string section the way you do and the way one does?
Well, let's see. I think that I'd like to think that, our individual concepts of sound that we have, which are so personal, it's like our voice, is something that when you were auditioning for the position or being considered for the position, the group that was considering you was like, we like this person's sound. We like their approach to sound. So already there's that. Hopefully there's a good fit. And then by demonstrating, by asking of your sections or the other sections for certain types of improvements to the sound, as we all do together, then you can sort of shape, the tone, the sound of the orchestra. And I've always been a big proponent of a very dark, rich sound, especially from the high violins, which cannot be so nice. And especially if you're dealing with acoustics that are not great, which happens a lot when you're running around playing in different venues. If you have a really beautiful dark sound, then the violins will always sound good, no matter what the acoustic is, So I don't know, I guess that's how I think of it. And I try to ask that of my sections and the other sections and demonstrate it when I do play. Yeah.
Well, it really works. And the sound of our violins, which is gorgeous, and for that matter, the whole string section is really your sound. And I'm grateful for that.
Great.
What about the actual leading? How much do you take it upon yourself? How much do Do you take it from if the conductor isn't leading too much, do you lead more? If the conductor, what's the balance between your actual movements? And, you know, when you're playing in a string quartet, I watch you when you lead beautifully and meticulously, and it's clear what the vision is and how we should play. What about orchestrally?
Well, I think in an orchestra, I feel like I need to translate what the conductor's doing into a physical motion that makes sense to string players. That's sort of the way I think about it. So a lot of the times, I'm lucky to work with people like you and other people who understand string playing really well. And so their physical gestures are very clear to string players. You know what I mean? String players understand, you know how to make a violin sound rich, or play with a softer attack or a more incisive attack, and so I don't have to do that much. Again, I'm leading more when there are things that the conductor needs to be occupied with in other parts of the orchestra. I'll lead more if it's a tricky thing. But then there's a lot of times that I find myself overdoing it, over leading when I didn't need to, and it's just distracting. So, you know, I tend to move a lot when I play, and a lot of concertmasters do, but many great ones don't. And equal results are gained on either side of that, you know. So I find that with me, usually less is more because I always do too much.
I don't think what you do is perfect. What about a number of times at EMF, you conduct from the chair? In other words, you lead without a conductor. I've seen you do it. This summer, unfortunately, you would have done it. I mean, fortunately, you would have done it. Unfortunately, you're not going to do it because we're not there for the 4 seasons. What is it like then when you're in that position without the conductor?
Well, there you're really hoping and enlisting, and I know this for a fact at EMF wouldn't be an issue, or at home, and Florida Orchestra is not an issue, but you're really wanting everybody on the stage to basically assume that we're playing a big chamber music concert, you know what I mean? So a Beethoven string quartet written for 40 people or something like that. You know, we're all on the same page. We're all moving together. We're all helping each other. As important as many of the violin parts are, there are tons of times when the cellos have to lead, or else it just doesn't work. I mean, you can't lead if you have a rest, but you can't even lead if you have a whole note and they've got moving stuff. So, you know, everybody has to work together. So what I often do when I'm in the conductor role as leading, sitting in the chair, is I just edit the parts very carefully so that the other players know when I expect them to kind of take over and be in charge of the you know, the initial gesture that gets us going and stuff like that. So it's just about sort of delegating, I think, you know what I mean? And making sure people understand who's following who. And when we have short periods of time to put it together, it's a good idea that I just have a clear idea of what's important, who's going to lead it, and how. And then the rest of it all works itself out because everybody's a good musician, hopefully. Yeah.
So let's move on now to our chamber music area. So you're the director of chamber music at our wonderful festival, which basically are Monday and Tuesday nights. And what do you do as the director of chamber music? Well,
basically we have, you know, 10 chamber music concerts in the space of 5 weeks, and a lot of wonderful faculty that are with us all summer, and then a lot of wonderful guest artists that cycle in and out. All of these moving parts kind of become the chamber music series. And so me and Gerard Schwarz, who has been such a huge help to me over the last couple of years, we sort of take requests from our colleagues, what they would like to play and with whom and when, and try to come up with some wonderful programs based on, you know, okay, well, somebody wants to play this piece, great, what can go with that? This guest artist is coming, Nadja Salerno-Sonnenberg wants to play this, our wonderful piano faculty want to play that. How do we make this all work? It's a bit of a shell game, and every year it's a challenge. And it's always a lot of fun. And actually having someone like Julian around who has this profound knowledge of the repertoire, it's so wonderful because, you know, I think I know a lot about chamber music because I've been playing it my whole life, but, you know, he knows every piece he's ever written. So it's so, and he knows exactly how long it is. And so I don't have to go on the computer. It's wonderful. So we have a wonderful time putting that together. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. and we have to work on it pretty much starting around Christmas time and push through the early part of the spring. And then there's the inevitable tweaking that comes up. But usually, by this time of year, everybody's known what they've been going to play for a long time. So we have a wonderful season all ready to go for 2021. So we just did it a year ahead of time.
Do you approach your actual playing now differently as a concertmaster, soloist, or chamber music player? How does it? What are the three varieties?
Well, I think honestly, in terms of difficulty from easiest to hardest, I would say the easiest thing to do for me is to be a soloist, because basically you just play loud. I mean, mezzo forte is as soft as you ever play, then you play louder. You don't have to have the control. Yes, you do, but come on. I know great soloists who are very willing to admit that it's a lot easier than the amount of control that you have to have when you're playing in a chamber ensemble, and then orchestra. I would say orchestra and chamber music are sort of equal because they each have very different types of difficulties in terms of control. There are still moments in orchestra where we and the strings have to play so quietly that not a single person can actually really play. But at the same time, you have to have control over your bow at that ridiculous, almost hypothetical dynamic. It's so quiet that, if anybody makes any noise, it's too loud. So that kind of control and the kinds of strokes that you have to produce in an orchestra at those incredibly soft dynamic levels are some of the hardest things you can do on the violin. So very now it's changing, but when I was a student, nobody taught us how to play like that, because if it wasn't louder than mezzo forte, you didn't need to worry about it. Now, but to actually play in an orchestra and be a good citizen and a good colleague, you have to have the control of a tiny little spiccato stroke at triple pianissimo and still sound clean and good, so that's hard.
Well, Jeff, I'm so sorry that we're not going to be together this summer. It's very sad for me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
we're all so looking forward to them. Come March or April, I'm already thinking about going to Greensboro and spending time, being your neighbor. Actually, you and I live across the field from each other.
That's right. And drinking coffee in the morning. We're going to miss it.
I get up in the morning early and I take a score outside on my little deck, and Jeff often comes by and we talk about Boeings and we talk about phrasing and we talk about programs and we talk about personal things too, because we're such friends.
Yeah, it's going to, we're still at June 15th here. So the last week of June hasn't hit us yet, but it's just, already I feel like the like salmon swimming upstream. I'm already thinking about, where are the linens that I have to take to EMF this summer? And it's going to be very sad not doing that. Yeah.
I'm going to miss you. Everyone in our audience and all of our supporters are going to miss you. And but T21 will be here before long, and we'll all be together again. And maybe we'll be able to figure some ways out this winter to do some things together. But in the meantime, I thank you so much for spending time with us. And I know everybody who loves EMF, who will be hopefully watching this, appreciates a little insight into your brilliance and your great artistry and your wonderful, warm, giving personality. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Thanks for having me, Jerry. Thank you.